Okay. Hello guys. So I'm Yash Shadulkar from GirlScript Surat. So today we have Hello guys. So I'm Yash Shadulkar. So we have live. Hello guys. I'm Yash Shadulkar. So I'm from GirlScript Gujarat. So today we all welcome you to the GirlScript Gujarat Summit. So this is the first session of GirlScript Gujarat. So we have planned the session for next 4 days. We have two themes, basically one designing theme and one React theme. So in our first session, we have a speaker, Mr. Raj Redania. So he's a founder of the Design and Code community, and he has worked as a designer and has experience of last 3 to 4 years. So now I would like to welcome Mr. Raj Redania for the live session. Raj,
Hey guys, hey Yash, thanks for the nice introduction. So, yeah, so are we waiting for people to join in or should I start the session now?
you can start.
Okay, just can you add the stream to.
So I'll run backstage.
Yeah, no problem. So let me give a quick introduction of myself so that you guys are familiar with me. So my name is Raj Didania. I work as a product designer and I also founded a community 3 years ago named Design and Code. It's basically a platform for creators who want to learn, who want to share their knowledge and basically grow in the community. And I also am a co-organizer of Figma Mumbai. So Mumbai, even the events happening in Mumbai by Figma has been co-organized by me. Apart from that, I most I'm welcome you guys to connect with me on LinkedIn and also on Twitter, so that you could ask me any questions. Even Instagram is also fine, but I would like to be a part of Twitter and LinkedIn only. Apart from that, the question arises कि आज क्या सीखने वाले हैं? So anyone from the team can let me know कि क्या सीखने वाले हैं? Like let's just engage the audience in this. So anyone could just type in their comments and I would just read it out over here. Yes. Let's start with that thing. So we would be learning some advanced feature in Figma and techniques basically. So I would suggest that like you could go and check out how Figma works and how things are being made in Figma after the talk. And you could also just ask me any questions if you want. So we would be making a simple app called Ubiter. It's a fun app जो मैंने बनाया था and it's application जो हम लोग live design भी करने वाले हैं. But apart before introducing what is Ubiter, uh, the things we would be learning would be the components. There's a concept called components in Figma. Second, there is a concept called style sheet. How do you maintain a style sheet? How do you use it? Apart from that, constraints पे थोड़ा discussion करेंगे so that you understand how constraints work. And the new feature in Figma which is called auto layout and it's super awesome. So वो भी हम लोग discuss करेंगे. And then the naming structure and how do you create an export folder so that developers are like it becomes easy for developers to use the files and assets. So let me just have the chance to introduce you guys to the app called Upita. So of course you guys know what this is a platform for us, and since we are developers, so I guess Ubuntu is the best platform, correct? Ubuntu is the best thing we love and make. So I made a application which is very much similar to how Twitter works, but we just change it into the theme of Ubuntu. And of course, since we love Linux and we are just developers, so let's just make it. But this is something you guys could also make, but where the concept of like advanced feature comes in. Let me just bring into your uh, idea. So just giving an example of how auto layout works. So what happens is ki when we start making things over here, we let's say I want a comment of 2 lines, correct? So हम लोग का डिजाइन बिगड़ जाता है. Let's say कि I just type in things and then it just overlaps with the components over here, and also you need to just fix the thing. Okay, इसका distance इतना था, इसका distance इतना था, and that kind of things. But there are many good features that would allow you to add content and remove content without even basically changing your design manually. It could be done automatically. So just introducing a concept for auto layout over here. Let's say, of course, we are live on YouTube, but with whom? So let's say ki, hey, I'm live on YouTube with GirlScript, GirlScript Surat. Uh, so as you saw ki automatically was spacing and all that thing was cover, correct? So that's one of the auto layout feature. Then let's say we have one more story, basically fleet in the application. We could just use the duplication command, which is Command D in Mac and Control D in Windows. So if you observe, वो automatically spacing हो गया. You do not need to manually do it. So I'm just giving an overview. हम लोग एक एक करके इसको break down करेंगे so that you guys could make it by yourself. So if you see it again, I would just duplicate the thing and it would automatically space out very nicely. And I guess we should do few more things. For example, let's say, of course, it's our own platform. So let's go about 2.1 million like comments. Wait, how much do you guys want? Let's say 4.5K, 4.4K, and of course, okay, 21 million. Okay, sorry. Yep. And yeah, anything you guys think is appropriate. So you guys could see keep automatically it didn't break out the things over here. So even if I add a image over here, let's say I'm adding this image to this thing, it automatically adapts the layout to this thing, correct? So we would be learning how to do this thing. Even let's say we are making this kind of elements where we need to show polls and elements over here. So I'm just replicating this thing, and if you guys observe it, just took out the space properly and without disturbing the other elements, correct? So this basically helps when you are designing a complex application where there is a probability that it would keep on changing. It would just keep on like updating, adding content, removing the content, and that kind of thing. And also, if you observe, I would just extend the screen over here. And if you see, it's sticking at the bottom, correct? And over here you can see it's like an overlay on top of the whole design over here. So I would encourage you guys to ask any questions if you want, so that I would be able to help you guys in the while explaining over here. So I would just suggest, Yash, can you just read the comments out, and when you think it's appropriate, I could just hop in into the answers, correct? Apart from that, let me just start with the concept of components. So just to explain, so how do you guys make a button? It's basically let's do it in the style sheet. I just like to maintain this kind of hierarchy where we have a design files over here and styles over here. So let's think of a button. Let's say we make a button. I'm just making it randomly. Let's say it's called button. It's about 16 pixels. ये कुछ ज़्यादा बड़ा हो गया. Cool, cool. Let's do it. So what I'm doing is, okay, let's say we have 24 pixels का right and left padding. One, 24 and top and bottom पे let's go with 12, and let's have a rounded edge, having it. Let's say since our app is let's say a bit softer color. I'm just changing the text color also. So let's say this is our pattern. and we want to reuse it at every stage, correct? I'm just like, just renaming is that button slash primary button. So let's say we use this component at each and every step of the development, correct? So let's say this is a button which is used and login screen. This button is used at let's say in other places like on the home screen, another place like settings and the XYZ. So let's say we make it as a component. So components are basically, if you guys understand how variable works in development, correct? So you create one variable and then you reuse the variable name, and basically it's called an instance, and you call out instance, and when you change the variable, it's deployed across every other instance, correct? So let's make a use of it. So let me just bring the button over here. So you could access the components from here. Basically, it's called asset ka thing. You drag and drop it over here. So let's have a think. Let's think this is something which we do not like. This is basically Twitter color, correct? So we want to make it orange. Let's just do that thing. So if you observe, I just change the master component, and your instance would also adapt the same thing. So this is basically how a component would work. So there you could make components for textiles, you could make components for buttons, you could make components for even the card. So let's say if you want to make a component of this thing, and just duplicating this thing over here. And if I say this is one of the component, let's rename it as card and repeater card, repeater post. If I could just reuse this component at each and every place when I'm trying to make things over here. But let's just reuse this component. We could reuse the card thing and make our Jupyter app. So this is the concept of components. Guys, if you have any questions, you could just comment down in the YouTube comments over there, and Yash could help me with the questions. Apart from that, what happens is that, let's say I want to change, let's say we just change the color from orange to, let's say, something like green color. Since we are developers, we like to use this green color. So what usually happens if we don't make a color style sheet is that we need to go and, let's say I'm just using this green color as our color, and you will need to select each and every element and then basically go and update it, and it's a tedious job. This is just a one page thing that even that is becoming a pain for me to do it, correct? So what we do is we create I would say a color style sheet. So let's say let's go, and so if you click on this four dots, you could basically create your own color styles. So I would just name it as primary color, and we just created the primary color thing. So while you are using the color, you just while basically when you are designing, you just need to apply the colors to it. It's basically kind of how variable works. Adding it over here. So if you see, let's say let's just observe on this particular panel. Let's say I want to change the color to something like blue color, and you could just do it at one click and it would be deployed across everything. So this is also one concept of how you could use color styles, and even for the textile also we could do the same thing. So what I would do is we could just break down the whole application into small parts and we could start creating it. Okay, so what all things do we need? First of all, we need let me just type in over here. We need a text declaration. Then we need color declarations. Apart from that, I would say components, some components. Mm, then Yeah, basic for this particular example, we could just make three of this. So let's just start and understand what are the things we require, correct? One is this particular header, second is your username, and then there is the text body, and then this kinds of text elements. I guess this and this particular is 12, this thing. This is also same. So we could combine this particular style sheet. So I understand, I believe that you guys are familiar with the tags which are used in HTML, correct? H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, H6, body, paragraph, links, and that kind of thing, correct? It's very similar to how we would do also, we would also do the same thing with this thing. So we could just name it as a header. In application, we could change the name. It's not H1, 2, H6, and then body and so on. We could just use it at header. I would say subheader or kind of a tag or something. We could just name it as this thing, and then a body text, correct? And I guess this is pretty much all the case. Yep. Yeah. So let's just try and make that thing as a text style. Okay. So let's see. I'm just making it in the text background over here. So this is header. I usually also try to name it. I would just like to. This is one second. Copying the elements. Okay. So this is header. I would just like to add the details of this in the naming itself. So it's 12 pixels and it's Roboto bold. Correct. And let's just give a fixed, I would say, style to it. Same similarly, wherever you see this four dots, it's basically you could create a style of it. I would just create a style for this thing. I would just name it as text slash header header, and let's create this thing. So if you see now, it's kind of declaration of variables over here. Let's just make this is a subtext, subtitle, and we need to copy this particular style, basically regular and 12. Wait, 1 second. Yes, Roboto would be the best font since we love. So just removing the color. It's better that we don't add colors to the style because later on we could override the colors also. This is subtitle, which is again 12 pixels, but it's a regular Roboto regular font. Apart from this, we also had the main body. Let's make one body over here. This is body text, which is seen, and it's also Roboto regular. So let's just create a style of this. It's subtitle. I would add it as text slash subtitle. I would explain you why I'm giving it as a text slash the name of the uh, text. Let's just create this one also. It's called text slash body. So basically, we created the text styling for the whole application for now. Let's go and check what other things we need. We need colors and then the components, correct? So let's just create colors over here. So there are a couple of good colors we have. One is this primary orange color. Then we have this kind of an grayish kind of color. Then there is the white color. I'm not sure if we have any other colors. Yep, we have only the three colors we want for the application, correct? So let me just bring in the colors. Uh, we already have declared the primary color. Let me just create one another color, which is this color. You could just name it from here itself. You could just use this color, and you could say it as a secondary text color. This is you don't name it like this. This is just that you guys understand it over here. I'm just naming it over here. You basically create primary, secondary, tertiary colors and that kind of thing. So it's a secondary text color. I would consider it secondary text, and this is uh, text white color. So I guess that's pretty much done over here. So colors are done. So let's just play around with how things would work if I want to create, like, say, orange text over here. So let's say I'm just typing out this workshop is awesome. Guys, let me know if it's awesome or not. I will just be waiting for your feedback. So you guys could select it from here and see which one do you want to like, which one want to basically do you want to add. So let's say we want to add it over here. This is basically a subtext, if I'm not wrong. So you could just add subtitle over here so that it basically adapts the style to it, and it's orange color, correct? So you could just give a color to it. So what happens over here is that both the things are independent of each other, correct? So you could just make reuse the components as in when you are designing the things. So we made this thing. Let's just add this thing to this thing. One second. Just change it. So that it has this style and this kind of thing. Guys, please do vote over here. Okay. Apart from that, we have components. Components एक एक करके जाते हैं. I would suggest that we start making and breaking the things over here. So let's just create an artboard. You create an artboard by clicking A, or you could just create an frame basically. Frame and artboard and frames are basically same over here. To create a frame, you could just click on that particular button and select the device you want to create for. I usually create it for iPhone 10. So just make an artboard for iPhone 10. You always see this particular thing, correct? The uh, time and tight, I would say, status bar, and then the this thing as a bottom navigation, correct? We could just copy things from over here. So I'm just copying it from here because we have a very limited time for this application. I need to explain all the concepts are possible over here. This is explaining, since it's white, it's not been shown properly over here. Let's just uh, also we have this kind of primary dark color, correct? We can just make a color of it also. Let me just add that color. Let's see, uh, dark background color. We could just implement the dark background color over here itself. Okay. And if you guys see, it's like now it's showing ki, okay, title hai ye hai, correct? Let's just try to make this kinds of elements. So what I usually do is I can quick box may add color so that they are always of a equal size. So if you observe over here, there's a rectangle behind it, and which is basically transparent over here. You could see pass through is zero, basically 0% opacity, so that it's just contained in a good box so that everything is like properly sized and made over here. So just copying the elements over here. But what we would do is additionally is that we would add the color codes over here. So we would add the orange color. So there is a very good feature on Figma is that let's say there are multiple colors in this particular thing, correct? This whole artboard, we have primary color, we have a dark background color which is given to the background, we have white color, let's just give white thing over here, and there's also this thing, but it would start adding in colors. So not necessary we add it over here. So you could just select the main component and you could just drill down into it, which all colors have been used into the particular element. So you could just change it from here. You do not need to go and manually change each and everything from here. Okay, usually you when you select a element, you go and change it from here. I'll just break it over here and you change it from here. This is a safety feature we have. Let's just create one line, basically a divider, something similar to this thing. So just making that thing. It's kind of this gray color, but we could just reduce the opacity to something like 20% so that it's not that prominent. Let's have a spacing of 16 pixels. Is it too tight? Is it too? Yeah, it's fine. ठीक है. 16 pixels का क्या? Now let's start making out the components and reusing the thing. So let's just see how this particular element could be made. Okay, let's just breaking it down one by one. Let's ungrouping everything possible. If you observe, there is a inner circle which is 42 uh, pixels height and width. So I'm just making a 42 pixels a circle. Then we have one another circle which is 48 by 48, but it basically has only the stroke color and not the fill color. So let's just make a 48 by 48 circle. I'm just helping you guys understand okay how this is made. Let's just remove the fill color and add a stroke. Add a stroke of color orange over here. And how thick is this? Let's just make it 2 pixels over here. And you could just start overlaying on this thing. But just observe that which elements are above which elements. I'd say let's rename it also. Your DP, I would say. And then we have this active circle behind it. I'll just name it active circle. So this is how you create the whole this particular element of this. I would say fleet, Twitter ka fleet वैसा. So what should we call our own fleet? Let's say fleet. I'm not sure. You guys could comment down how what should we call it and what should not be called. Okay, let's just create a text layer also. So this, if you observe, this is something new we observed, correct? This is a very small text. This is not being used right now. Let me just make it as a uh, just naming it small text right now. If you observe, it's 10 pixels, Roboto and regular on the right side of panel, correct? Just making it 10 pixels and Roboto regular. Just giving it a style, then calling it as small text. Okay, cool. So let's just make this. Have we declared this color? Not sure. Yeah, we have declared that color. Okay. So adding a name to it. Apple, let's say Apple is one of our user for the application. Let's see how much padding it is. It's around 8 pixels from this external circle and 11 pixels from the inner circle, correct? So I'm just adding it at 8 pixels. So what usually I do is that I always have a spacing of 4 pixels, increments of 4 pixels. So everything is in the multiplier of 4. So there could be a spacing of 4 pixels, 8 pixels, 16 pixels, 24 pixels, that kind of thing. So it just helps me with creating the basically uh, hierarchy, and also it becomes consistent while you're creating the whole product, correct? Just giving a color to it. This is gray color. This is given to this thing. And of course you could use like Figma's community section and use plugins from here. So there's a plugin called Unsplash. You guys might be familiar with Unsplash, which is a free resource for this is plugin Unsplash, which is royalty free images for the use. So I've already installed it from here. What you could do is you could just select the element which we want to give an image to. You basically right click on it, plugins, Unsplash, and let's find out a good photo if possible. Let's say portraits, good photo. Let's give me a good photo. And this is fine. Yep. So it basically adds a photo to the whole section over here. So let's just delete this thing and let's make this as one component. I'm just grouping the external circle and the inner circle group. Uh, Grouping this with the whole main circle grouped. Just cutting it from here. So I just make a style page over here so that I could just manage all the components from here itself. You could, of course, you could make the components over here, but then it becomes a mess key because the concept component like, yeah. Let's just use this button and make it a component. Let's give it as a component, this component slash fleet profile. Given the fleet profile, so what happens is that I could just drag and drop the whole components from the things. Okay, so I'm just dragging components, this thing, done. So let's say I'm not adding this plus right now. I'm just making the section over here. So now let's understand the concept of auto layout. I'm just placing it nicely over here. It's 20 pixels, 16. Okay, cool. So let me just duplicate it once. Just duplicating it once, 16, and you could basically select both the things and shift A so that it becomes auto layout. You could just see the icon change from like a normal rectangle and diamond. Since usually it would be a rectangle, but since it's a instance of a component, you could see it's a rectangle, basically an empty rectangle. And if you want to see the component thing, it's basically four diamonds over here. So let's just select both the elements, use Command Shift. I'm not sure if it's available from, yeah, add to auto layout. You could just right click and use this thing, Shift A, sorry, Shift A for the auto layout, create an auto layout. So now you just need to just see what's happening over here. So if you see, there's a section added as auto layout in this particular panel. So how do we want to basically expand our frame? So we wanted to, let's say when we add an element, it should grow horizontally, correct? So we could make it horizontal. And also if there are, let's say, you're making a list of things, correct? So lists are basically stacked vertically. So you could just change the orientation. If you see, it just changes the orientation over here. Whereas if you see, horizontal padding is 0 because it's talking about a particular element. Sorry, the whole part of this box. So if you see, there is zero padding to this thing. There's 0 pixel padding over here, and there's also 0 pixel padding on the top. Correct. If I add a padding for 4 pixel, let's say, if you see, there's a 4 pixel padding on both the ends. Let's say we add a 12 pixel padding on top. So it just adds that thing. I'm just not using this thing. And what this particular thing means is between space between two elements. So if you see, the space between two elements is 16. I could just change it to 24, let's say. So it would just increase the spacing between it. Now comes the cool part of auto layout. So let's just select this thing, and I'm just duplicating it. I usually use Command D to duplicate it. So it's Command D, and it will automatically add the spacing and add the things to it. Uh, let's say we want to change the photos over here. I'm not using Apple over here. I would say Nike, and let's say another brand. Let's say any good brand you guys know. Let's say Samsung. I'm not sure. Okay. I also have one plugin which would help us with changing the photo. Basically, a plugin you could use plugin called Brand Fetch. It's basically fetching the images from the website. So I could just use Nike in the logo for Nike. You just adapt the color for Nike, and basically it would add the logo to Nike, the circle. Similarly, I'm just using Samsung. Sometimes it just hangs over here. It's we are using Salesforce, correct? I'm just changing the logo. Yes. Now it's coming Samsung. Okay, let's go with back to Samsung. We have this cool blue color. Okay, you could just use this kinds of plugins. One is brand fetch and one is unsplash thing. Hmm. So if you smartly observe, we have just given out colors to this. Later, we would just change the brand color into something and it would be deployed in 1 second. We could just use this kind of concepts. Apart from that, we also need a divider for this. We could just duplicate it by Command D, basically Control D on Windows, just giving out a space of 16 pixels. I guess it's too tight. I would say it is 20, 16 TK. Let's say 16 pixels. Now let's start and creating this particular element, correct? Just copying it over here so that we could just replicate it again. So what are the things inside this particular element? Where we have one photo, we have a name, we also have a start, basically a verified thing. We have this name and we have this time along with it. Expanding text, let's say we can remove this thing and it should adapt the, basically the whole component should adapt to the whole typing and spacing over here. Okay, so let's just do one thing. Let's just break down each and everything possible. Okay, just breaking it down. So we have one photo. How do you use this photo is basically just, okay, so you get your own photo. Please don't tell me that anyways, let's go back to the topic. So it's basically a photo and a circle given to it. I'm just giving it a 56 by 56 size. Just select it. I'm just doing a random thing. You could just use this mask uh, element to just mask your photo. You just need to make sure that your image is above the masking layer. So what happens is your image is above the circle and the circle would clip your image. It's a confusing thing while you're designing. Let's say we just place the uh, photo. Now we also need this particular text, correct? So it's a normal text. Like we could just add my name. Okay. It's a style we've already made, which is called header, correct? And we could give a color of white. Let's second, I've just not selected it properly. You just need to select the whole component while it was on the cursor previously, header and color to white. So now we have added this thing and we would add this but this verified thing later. I would just make this two things over here. So this is basically my username, TDNIA, and it's we gave it a subtitle thing and added this color to it, correct? Just making the components for now. We also have the timer. Yeah, also, if you observe, we have this small circle, correct? The small circle between the time and the username. So we could just create this thing by making a circle. It's basically creating, you could use this drop down to create a circle, and there's a shortcut for it, O. Basically, you could click on O and it would just create a shape for you. It's a very small thing. I just made it 2 pixels by 2 pixels and just aligning it properly over here. Right now you see the alignments are like messed up over here, correct? So what we would do is select all the elements and use our auto layout technique over here. You just right click on it or basically use shift A. It will just auto layout it properly. If you observe, there is a 4 pixels spacing between each elements. We could just reduce it to 4 because it's looking, yeah, this is looking nice. Uh, then we also have this element attached to this thing, correct? Like it's a part of the whole section. So you could just create a text saying we are already live on YouTube. Okay, giving it a body text and then giving it a white color. Just placing the elements right now, then we would see the magic of auto layout over here. Uh, we just gave it a name. Now we want this icons. Just just use the icons from here itself. You could basically create your own icons using it over here. And let's just give them a color so that it is helpful for us later. Just giving color to this thing. I just selected this thing. This is Oh, white color. It's just a empty box given to it. Okay. Then we want our counts. Let's say we have 1.3k the subtext, and again it's a gray color thing. So adding it over here. We would later check the spacing and all these things. Just adding it randomly right now. So selecting both the elements, aligning it horizontally, and now we could see the spacing between each element. We could just reduce it to 4 so that it's a bit good tight over here. Uh, Again horizontally align 4, just grouping it by Command G or Control G on Windows. Again 4, and we did this thing. Nice. What we would do is we would auto layout this thing. So let's say we want to add something extra on this thing. So we could just horizontal line it. It's now 30 pixels apart from each other. We could make it 32. We just command. Sorry, actually we should not be using auto layout to this. Reason why I'm just showing you. So let's say we make a auto layout of this. See, I made a auto layout of this thing. Now what would happen is that since the component this thing would change. Basically, let's say if you observe, like let's say we just only get 5 retweets, so your component is moving. That should not be the case, correct? It should be persistent across all the things. This removing the sorry auto layout and just grouping it together so that we could just use it together. Uh, for now, we just add a text tweet. I would just say. So what would I do is basically if we want to make let's say change this particular spacing every time, uh, just select both of the elements, add a auto layout to it, adding a auto layout from here. So now what would happen is that anything added between this thing would have a 6 pixels padding. Now what happens is that when you create an auto layout, it automatically aligns it center. If you just click on the elements, you could see it's center aligned. We just need it left aligned, correct? We just made it left aligned. So why I made a auto layout of this thing and not to get like all the components together is basically we have a difference of padding. We have a 16 pixels padding over here and 6 pixels thing over here, correct? So let's just make it 16 over here. Just create this thing and create an auto layout of it. I'm just creating auto layouts and auto layouts. It would help us and like while scaling the thing. So if you observe it over here, it's a nested auto layout. So this is one group, which is this thing. It's an auto layout since we already made an auto layout from here. And then we have text and an auto layout from here itself, correct? So just keep it left aligned. So now what would happen is that whenever I start typing more than the, so make it full width over here so that it could basically go to the end and giving it a 20 pixels spacing from the right side. So just copying the element. If you see, the elements are basically scaling up with each other. If I remove this particular text also, see your components are never breaking. So this becomes a very good technique of managing the components. So let's just make a tweet. So we could just group them together. We could just copy, let's say this from here and add it over here. And we would just make it a component so that we could use this particular element again and again. So creating a component from here, naming it as, let me name this thing. It's a card slash ubita, I would say post. So now we have this thing. We could just delete this thing. Anyway, okay, that's a different thing. Uh, okay, coming back to this thing, we could just use the asset panel for adding the component over here. Center aligning so that it's 20 pixels from both the side. Okay. Uh, now Since we made this thing also as auto layout, let's just add a verification badge to our name, correct? Uh, just selecting the verification icon, and I will just select the name besides whom I want to add the component. So let's just add it. Because we basically need to override the master component. I will just go to master component, select it over here, add a this thing. Now if you come back to the design file, it would be added over here, correct? So this is how you create an auto layout, nested auto layout, and basically a component. Basically, we covered out the concept of components, style sheet, constraints पे आते हैं, and auto layout, correct? I'm just making it green over here. That it just gives me a cue that okay, this is done. This is done. This is done. Okay, so now coming to the concept, let's just make the whole application first. Let's just compose it. I'm not adding this particular share button and this thing right now. This will take time. Okay. So let's say we also want to create a component where these things are being basically it should be nested to each other. And whenever I would, let's say तीन option कर ले पांच option देना in the vote, correct? So we could do that thing also. Just copying the elements from here. Actually recycle the components from this thing. So you can just duplicate this thing. And let's say this, keeping it aside right now. I just detach this thing from the master component so because we want to add this kinds of element to it. I will just click on the thing, post, detach, so that it's now independent of the whole section. Now what would happen is, let's say we just create this one particular uh, button over here. So the button size is 266 by 32. I'm just creating that thing over here. It's 266 and P2, right? If I'm not wrong. 266 32. Giving out a bigger radius so that it becomes a rounded rectangle. We don't have a fill color in it. We just have a stroke color, which is basically our primary orange color. What I would do is just make it a bit, I would say, reduce the opacity so that it's not that strong. We could just go till 50% over here. Uh, I would add a text to it. This is awesome. Uh, this is basically the subtitle and giving it a orange color itself. Okay, so I'm just adding it over here, just grouping it center aligned vertically and horizontally, and just grouping it so that we could use this thing again and again. Okay, so just replicate this thing and make this thing as an auto layout. So if we want to add a particular vote or remove a vote, we could do that thing. This is awesome. I am loving it. Not an endorsement for McDonald's, but it's just that we are loving the session. I'm loving it. Uh, that's creating an auto layout by Shift A, or you could just click it from here. So now what would happen if we just add another element is that it would just keep on expanding, correct? And one awesome thing with what we do is just remove cutting this thing from here and adding it below this thing. If you see, just it just come back to this thing. Okay, so it just adapted the design to the whole thing over here. Since we didn't add a auto layout to this thing, that's why it went above and it's not in the same direction. Let's say we just want to keep on adding couple of more, I would say, elements. Just adding two elements over here. Loving it. This is the best workshop, and please do this auto layout thing again. Okay. The text is growing growing on both the side because we center lined it previously. So yeah. So we could basically create this particular instance, and let's say we also want a divider between two particular posts, correct? I'm just duplicating this particular divider and adding a 24 by 24 on top and moving this particular element 24 pixels below. It's 24, 24. Adding one more thing, it's 24. And yeah, pretty much it's now done. We could just group two elements together, basically a bottom, I'd say bottom divider and the element together. I could just group it together. Could just group these things together. And what we would do is create an auto layout for both of the elements, correct? So what would happen is that it would help us to basically add and remove elements without basically disturbing the whole design. So I'm selected both the groups over here and doing an auto layout for this thing. So since if you observe 24 pixels ka padding lag gaya, basically what it's talking about 24 from this space. Okay, so let's say we like to tweet a lot, correct? We just could duplicate the element and it will just expand the section. Let's just go check. Okay, yes, as you can see, it's a long list now, correct? Let's just copy this elements to make it a bit simple. Just remove this thing for now. And let's go back to the topic of constraints now. So if you observe, when I expanded the artboard vertically, the bottom, this thing was attached to the bottom of the application. And if you go and observe this particular thing, right now it's stuck to this thing, correct? It's in the bottom of the whole yard. It's a normal thing jo hone wala, correct? But what you could do is if you want to have elements which are like, and for example, we see tabs and we see bottom sheets, bottom nav bar always been shown on the application and uske piche screen move ho raha hai, correct? So we could do a similar thing by fixed position when scrolling. So it would just be what it's showing constraints over here is that it should be attached from the left and the bottom. You could just remove this thing if I do this thing top and left. If I just expand this section from here, what would happen is that spacing aa jayega, but we do not want that thing. We want them to grow with the screen, correct? I just made it bottom. If you observe, now this would move with the whole section, correct? But your prototype won't be affected since you created key, it should be overridden on the uh, top of the elements. Okay, so it would basically fix position when scrolling, correct? So this is one thing we covered on constraints. So constraints, there are many more things you could do. Basically, it's used for creating elements while making sure that they are fixed to a particular position. So just giving an example, let's say we make a artboard again over here. Let's say again this thing, and we just use this button for now. Just making it say this thing. Correct. So just center aligning it to the main artboard. So for now, if you see the artboard ka, I would say the constraints which is left say, so if you see there is a dotted line basically showing this is left in top constraint added to it. So what would happen is it will just calculate ki top se kitna distance and left side se kitna distance hai. And if you scroll it vertically, it would be uh, aligned with the top section, correct? Because हम लोग ने constant क्या लगाया है top and left, correct? Even if I like horizontally grow the artboard, it would still stuck on the left side. So let's do one exercise, which is make it center align, center align. So I'm just clicking on this thing. You could just do center line, and this is also center line. So what would happen is when you try to expand things, it would just be in the center. If I even also make it a small circle, it would be center line, correct? So similarly, the concept of bottom align. For example, this could become our top align elements. You just need to give a background to it later. But let's say this is something which should always be fixed on the position, and you would see this thing at the top, and it's stuck in the thing, irrespective of if I grow the artboard vertically or not. Uh, yeah, we touched upon the concept of constraints. This kinds of things are like I would suggest that you guys do practice for this thing so that you basically have confidence on using this thing. Now coming back to the naming structure, so you create awesome application, you create beautiful applications, you do it very nicely, but the end of the product has been made by developers, correct? We need to make sure that they also get the right icons at the right time, and we basically need to become developer friendly so that they could quickly create the I would say the application. So I was just giving out an example for icons. What we need to do is we just need to basically start renaming the icons. Create a basically sure. So what I do is command R to rename it. You could just see कि rename के लिए आ जाता है. What I use as a naming is icons, and then this is a menu icon. So I could use icon slash menu. I would use this as icon slash brand logo and icon slash highlights. Okay, so we do one more icon and just close it. Okay, let's say this is the home button icon, correct? I will just use it at icon and home. While exporting things, you need to also okay, just get that home. You need to make sure it's exportable over here so that developers could export it. So I'm just giving uh, exportable of 1x, 2x, and 3x since we are making for iPhone and making one version of SVG. So we would have this particular as home, and also let's just make this thing also exportable and giving it a suffix. You could directly export it from here also. I could just click on the dots and drop down and click export. So it would you could see the exportable things. So I was just creating an export. Let's say it would just create a export for this thing. I would just rename it as script type session, a folder basically for the export folder, saving it. If you click on this particular folder, go to this thing, and let's again, is it in the documents? One second, let me just check it out. One, it's in export, select exporting. Oh, sorry, I just made it on the wrong directory. Let's say GirlScript live, and now it's in the download section, and it's we made a folder of it. What would happen is, it would create a folder since we gave an icon slash something, so it would just give them a folder. So icon brand logo, we made four exportable elements from it. Highlights के चार element, home के चार elements, and menu के चार elements, correct? So you could see it made a folder. So this slash naming would help you guys to just with creating different folders in the Figma itself. So for example, when this has been used is basically creating primary, second, a active state, a disabled state, and a normal state, correct? So let's say this particular icon, we could just delete this folder for now so that we know that okay, we are doing it correctly. Okay, just deleting the folder, so we don't have a folder now inside the live script. So let's say this is an active state, correct? We also duplicate it and create an inactive state, and let's say this is a normal state. That's correct. So what we could do is icon slash active, icon slash disabled or inactive if you want to call it, and this is normal. What would happen is if I go and export this elements, let's just go it in the export it in the GirlScript live folder and save it. So if you go and check the folder, there's an icon folder. Icon folder के अंदर तीन folder बन गए, active, disabled, and then a normal state. So this also helps you, I would say, keep the exports neat so that developers could find it easily. So yeah, I hope this was kind of an additional things you guys might be using apart from the normal Figma development. So coming back to the backstage, Yash, can you just join the call? I will just stop my uh, screen share. Yep.
Hey Raj, so
Yeah.
thank you
Hi.
for the session. People
Yeah.
really, I got some comments from my side and YouTube also. So
Uh-huh.
there are questions for you. So the first question is, in Figma, can the
Mm.
person change the color of multiple components at a single time?
Yep.
Like,
So I could just share the thing. You can just add my screen to the thing. So I just forgot to add this thing. Can you just okay, cool. So I guess he was talking about the concept of we using the naming structure, correct? Like
yeah,
so since we used the orange color across everything and we were using this textiles, correct, from your primary color. So let's say I want to color the brand color itself for just bringing this thing again over here. Uh, okay. So let's say कल जाके अपना brand color change हो गया orange से let's say any favorite color Yash?
blue.
Blue? Okay. So
Right?
let's just so what I did is when when you haven't selected anything, you could just click on. You basically have the local style sheets available on your right panel. You could just click on the setting icon. Let's say we change the color to something like blue color, and you would see it deployed across everything. Since we then added a color to this thing because मैंने पीछे से copy किया था, just removing this element. But if you observe every other element जिसको हम लोग ने ये किया था, giving it a primary color, it just deployed the color across everything. I'm not liking this particular color, making something like this blue. Okay, so yeah, if you see, the color was deployed on a single click rather than just selecting each and every element and then changing the color. Correct?
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, this is one thing you could do. I guess while he was talking, the very similar case where you could do is this thing is that we usually don't when you're starting learning, like when you're starting with Figma, you usually don't know about the style sheet maintaining a style sheet and maintaining a text style sheet, correct? So what you could
Yeah.
do is if you want to change the color uh, simultaneously, you could just select the elements together, just make it, let's say, green color. I'm just detaching this thing. What I did is key, so it's very similar how you guys select a file from a folder, correct? It's shift command shift command shift command shift, basically control shift, and then changing the color to, let's say, orange color. You could do this thing if you want, or you could just create one primary color and then deploy it across each and every application. This I prefer to use a color style and text style because it helps me to keep the consistency across the whole application, correct?
Yeah. So,
Yeah, I hope this answers his question.
yeah.
Any other question?
So not for this session basically. Yeah.
Okay.
So I have a question basically.
Mhm.
So like for designing basically there are a lot of things. Like I have heard about Figma, Sketch,
Correct.
Adobe. There are some similar things like Framer also. There is something there.
Correct.
So how a person gets like confused, like what exactly to use and what exactly to
Mhm.
do. So can you
So
as a beginner?
yeah, so I would like to take the opportunity. So we have a talk at 7:30, correct? So I will be
Yeah.
talking about how do you think as a designer. There's one topic I would cover is that tools are secondary, and your basic foundation is something which you need to first establish. And because if you just think of it, 5-7 साल पहले हम लोग क्या use करते थे? We were using Photoshop, correct? To
Yes.
create the things. Now, then, like 3 years ago, Sketch came into the picture. It changed the whole screen making process, and now Figma is one of the market leaders. Correct. So I
Mhm.
would suggest that you could just so I would like to say this in a sense that tools are basically your extension for your skills. Your skills are basically your foundation for design. So for now, what I would suggest is you could start with Figma. Don't depend on one tool. So it's like try and use different tools. So which So I've seen many people saying Adobe XD is also good, but I personally prefer Figma because it's cloud based. I could collaborate with other people and that kind of things. But please, guys, do make sure that tools and all the things are secondary to your thought, and your design foundation and principles are first established into the picture. So we would discuss it in a bit detailed in the second talk. So I hope that over there people could join in and yeah, ask more questions over there. So it would be more of a talk rather than a tutorial. So let's see.
So thank you, Raj. Thank you for coming to
Yep.
GirlScript,
Yep.
and thank you very much. So we
Yeah.
really enjoyed your session, and I get to
Yeah.
learn a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. No problem. You guys could just ask me any question. As you could just see my handle over here. So I'm open for your questions. I would be like I would be like put my best efforts to help you guys over there. So yeah. Anything else you? Yash,
Thank you
Haley.
so much, Raj, for coming, and I really got to know more about components and all those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Thank you guys. Thank you, GirlScript, for hosting the session. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
Raj. So thank you very much. Thank you very much to our viewers. So basically, you came, you saw the video, and you enjoy. I hope you enjoyed the session. So our next session will be at 7:30 p.m. today itself, and it is going to be conducted by the same speaker, Raj Redania. He is going to tell us about the design principles and fundamentals. So just the way we had today, amazing session and boot camp. Even today, even evening, he's going to come and talk. So we really hope you see. We really hope to see you there. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, Gulsif, for allowing me to host. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.